Tom Arnold, everybody.
Oh my God!
Look at you.
Look at Mark, the great Mark Thompson. You know, I was watching the program, your program, yourself. That the speech that Biden has given at Moms Demand Action. Are you familiar with Moms Demand Action? The organization Shannon Watts started in her kitchen after a mass shooting. It's a great organization. I guarantee the people from the moms from Moms Demand Action are not booing him. I'm sure there is something else, but it's a great organization. I recommend checking them out. And you know, they work with Everytown now, which is another killer organization. So these guys are doing. It is weird, but I'm going to tell you this: being a recovering drug addict, we do terrible things. We drag people that care about us into terrible things. That's it is important that we get it together. And the fact that Hunter Biden, you know, you saw his whole family there, that's rare, because when you've done the things that he's done and some of us have done, there's nobody there with you because they're done. Because there's so much we tarnish them, we tarnish ourselves, we are danger to society. And when somebody like Hunter Biden gets sober, you know, which he's doing very well, that's a big deal. But the repercussions, I saw Patty Davis wrote a op-ed for the New York Times as a recovering person, just talking about honestly the stuff that could have gone terrible for all of us. You know, we're sloppy. We put ourselves in situations. We put other people in situations. We're dangerous. We drive. We do all this stuff. But the grace of God, you know, you get sober, but it's still there. The damage that you've done is still there, and we have to suck it up and deal with it. That's what
it's weird, Tom, because you know he has sobriety now, and he's dealt with, in fact, chronicled, as so many people who have struggled with addiction have, in book form and publicly, has chronicled so many of these dark places that he was as an addict. But now he had to sort of relive all of that in this courtroom, and the darkest times essentially were brought to life again, and now he gets this guilty verdict.
Yeah, but I think, you know, I've communicated with him and about our sobriety, and he is doing very well. It is the shame of having your daughter testify, your ex, your brother's ex, whatever. It's just a lot of tawdry stuff that you would like to bury. I would like to bury. But to me, as an addict, you gotta hear it. And to hear it in court is not ideal, because you know that's killing your dad and killing your mom and killing your aunts and uncles and killing, you know. But they seem that they're very proud of where he is. He's lucky to be alive. There's no doubt. You know, he was basically trying to kill himself, as we do, and there are consequences, and he may have to go to jail. That's what happens. You know, you do it. He's grateful to be alive, and to hear that over and over. And people are talking about the Trump trial. You know, he has to hear about having sex with a porn star while his wife was home with a little baby and had this other. And I will say, people on the other side are like, that's not important. So in the one way, this was a very tawdry trial too, and the stuff that he got involved with and the stuff that he did, which he was like not ashamed of. He was doing it out publicly. He was videotaping himself at these worst moments. He wrote about it in his book. They used his book to convict him, the things that he said. So they're both not ideal situations, but I assume that we were going to handle it differently. You know, Joe Biden is handling. He's like, I'm not going to pardon him. I'm not going to comment on the judge. I'm not going to comment on the jury. I'm not going to stand outside the courthouse screaming like a maniac and get my supporters and the other senators to come and stand behind me. And that's really that says a lot about Joe Biden. He loves his son. He unconditionally loves his son, and this is hard for him. But this is that's who he is. So,
and that's what, and Tom, at a time of the many moments when his son is dealing with the kinds of addiction that he was in the throes of, that love that you talk about, I mean, that's what families have to do as best they're able. They have to swallow hard and try to support their son or daughter and get through it.
Yeah, you got to get your head around what's going on. Like most people that are not addicts, they're like, what is that? What does he do? What is this? You know, it's scary. and you have to educate yourself. Well, this is what it is. And sometimes you got to do tough love. My sister went to prison for federal prison twice. I've had brother-in-laws die in prison. It's a real deal. And as the brother, you're like, I don't want her to go to prison the rest of her life, but there are consequences, and hopefully she learns from those.
I remember with your sister, you tried to intervene a couple of times. You tried to help her, and it was just impossible to really. Ultimately, it worked out, but this is my recollection anyway, that you tried to sort of intercede on her behalf, and it was difficult.
Well, I wanted to support her, and as a recovering addict myself, I understand how terrible the disease is, and the kind of stuff you get yourselves into. There's a documentary series about my sister called The Queen of Meth. Yeah, she was the biggest drug dealer in America. And people are like, was it embarrassing having your sister be a drug dealer? And I'm like, not when I was doing drugs, it wasn't embarrassing. It was pretty handy. But then you have to,
it was
for the
pretty
grace of God,
handy.
And so I think that the thing is, a lot of Americans, I think 8 out of 10 or 7 out of 10 families have somebody that are dealing with this disease. So we're more educated, we're hopefully more compassionate, but you do have to, even though you get sober, you got to step up, and there's consequences to your behavior, and you have to deal with that. So the families.
This is a weird overlap for you though, Tom, because you are politically astute. You've actually had dealings with Donald Trump. You were on The Apprentice, and you also, as you said, you've lived addiction. So there's a weird overlap in this world of politics and what's being used politically. And now you have podcasts and platforms to express yourself about these things.
I'll give you an even weirder one, Mark. In the 90s, Donald Trump Jr. got into a fight and was doing drugs and drunk and got arrested, and his dad kicked him out of the family. And his dad said, you're cut off. You're cut off emotionally. You're cut off financially. And my friends and myself stepped up and took care of him and gave him support. And I, doing what I do, they took him to Maui where we go. They paid for everything. And I felt really bad for the guy. So, there are groups of younger people that I was, helping and leading and our little meetings, and he was one of those guys. And I said to him, your dad's an a-hole. I mean, but it's that old school. They don't get what this is. And I promise you it's going to work out at the end, but you just got to get your shit together, man, and not worry about that. And so it's a very small world that we live in. I selfishly enjoy helping other people because it keeps me sober. It keeps me alive. And you have to give back. And a lot of times the people that I've helped come back and they end up helping me, because there isn't a straight line, at least not for me. Get sober, straight line. Sometimes there's bumps in the road, and you don't want it. We shame ourselves enough. We don't need other people doing it, but I'm very grateful to be here and have these people. Anyway,
that's a great line. We shame ourselves enough. We don't need others to do it. That's a great line. I also wonder, did Don Jr. ever circle back around to you? And you had other dealings with him, didn't you?
No. Yeah, I mean, I had some bad dealings once his dad was the president, but no, it's but he's aware, and I did when, I wrote a couple of things to him when he was bagging on Hunter Biden and how disgusting. I go, dude, that's you with the great, and that would be you to this day. And I said, you guys should be best friends right now, you and Hunter, because you have so much in common, because your fathers are in this position and you're the son of, and you've had substance abuse issues. It seems like you would reach out to him and say, hey, if you want to talk privately or whatever, you'd be the perfect person to sponsor him, is what I'm saying. So, but you get caught up in the politics.
That's the way it would do in the movie. That's the way it would go down. It doesn't look like it's going down that way in real life.
Yeah. But on the other hand, the reason I can never be president, there are many reasons. Arrested a bunch, arrested for public nudity and old folks. And I've been to the Playboy Mansion with Donald Trump. I went to the Playboy Mansion with Donald Trump, and I used to say, but I wasn't the creepy guy. But I was a creepy guy because I went to the Playboy Mansion with Donald Trump because he wanted to introduce me to his new girlfriend, Karen McDougal, and she's very nice, and we meet, and then he's like, oh, by the way, my wife is here and my daughter. let's all pose for a picture together. And they did. And I thought, he doesn't care. This guy doesn't care. And it's kind of funny that he doesn't care if he's that guy for the TV show, but he can never be president because he just doesn't care. And it's the people, he's never changed. It's the people, he's authentically awful. It's the people around him that used to have some kind of self-esteem or some kind of respect for law and order or the country or the Constitution. They've changed and they've just enabled him. So, you know, that's what we're seeing now. It's very disappointing, but we have to do something about it.
God, that's a wild scene. Karen McDougal. Yeah. And you're saying that he let you, were you aware of the fact that he was seeing her as his girlfriend?
Yeah, he said he'd done the Best Damn Sports Show, period. And he said, hey, listen, I got a party at the Playboy Mansion for my vodka or my tequila or something. Will you come over there with me? And I go, well, yeah, I'll do that. You did the show. That'd be fun. He goes, I want to introduce you to my new girlfriend. So that's where I met her too. And she's got a buddy sort of, she was Playmate of the Year, I think. And he was seemed very nice, very cute. And then he is like, and you could Google, there are pictures of this. And he's like, oh yeah, Melania's here and my daughter. And then they ended up posing for pictures together. And I'm like, holy moly, man. This is bananas.
Now, let me just speak to, or ask you to speak to the thing that I mention from time to time, which is, I think it's demonstrably the case, that there is some, what is it? It's charisma, it's something with Trump. There's a dynamic to his personality, Tom, that makes him both media savvy and lovable by media. When I say lovable, I mean they love to cover him, that because he'll say anything, because he's authentic. I wonder if you can speak to that. Like when you're in his presence, do you get the secret sauce that he has that's brought him to this place?
Well, he's got two things. Like anytime he came on a sports show, the show started, he would go, okay, I just want to say the reason I'm here is because of Tom Arnold. And that gives you little tingles in your spine. You're like, wow, he's here for me. It's not for the other people. He's here for me. And he just said that publicly. I also think there's something about him that you feel sorry for him. And I don't care. You're like, he's a billionaire. He's whatever. He's got this thing. But there is something about him where you're like, but yet I kind of feel sorry for this guy. Like, and you also think, okay, and this happened with Roseanne and when he first came out and said Rosie O'Donnell was a big fat pig, I wrote to Roseanne and go, you got to stand up for our friend Rosie O'Donnell. And she's like, well, he never called me a big fat pig. And that's the thing. That's how you get, if you're a black man, if you're a woman, if you're whatever, you're like, yeah, but I'm the one that he likes me. So I'm not going to speak up about these other people. And that's a failure of your character. But you can see how people want to believe. I get why all these white people in Iowa, where I'm from, my own family, they're like, well, he's like us. He's speaking our truth. We want to say that we're better than the top black person. The lowest white person is still better than, it's a history of the United States. So as long as we're still better than Barack Obama, who he's, and this guy believes it. Like he's the guy that's going to lead us to the promised land. And then what'll end up happening is he destroys everything. And that group of white people, it's happened in this country many times, stays in the same place. They never move up. And the people of color, the women, the other people that didn't buy into this all move up a notch. And every generation, there's a group of white people that are like, oh yeah, he's speaking our truth. He's speaking our language. He cares about us. And they never get anywhere. They stay in the same place.
But you note, I think, appropriately, just a couple of minutes ago, when you used the word he's enabled, you note these enablers now who are very high profile. He essentially has a whole, major party that's enabled him to the point that he may win this election. Yeah. And he's also been enabled by members of Congress who are leading investigations on his behalf. I mean, they're essentially not even worrying about passing legislation. They're more concerned with continuing the jihad for Trump. Yeah. Well, it's an extraordinary thing.
They say that, like Mike Johnson, he says he's a Christian, super Christian, the Bible stuff. There's nothing about Trump that would indicate that, And the funny thing about Mike Johnson, he's him and his son, Mike Johnson, this always needs a second look. They're each other's pornography sponsors. They're monitors. They're an app where they follow him and his son's pornography. Can you imagine following your dad's pornography and being there for him? And then he also has a a black son that he adopted before he got married that is the same age as him. And at first, when he had that black son and Trump started saying racist stuff, he's like, well, I could understand because I have a black son. Then now you don't see the black son. The black son's not in family pictures anymore. Like they're done with that. They, you know, this stuff with Trump, they're so on board. I don't know if they think he's like Jesus or whatever they think, that the power, the money, they're like, I want that. So they've all sold their souls. People like Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz, who said, and Liz Gabb, who said honest things about Trump at one point, where he's disgusting. He lies every time he opens his mouth, you know, because Trump went after their families and their wives. And they said he's going to ruin a party, which is really true. But you see those guys molding into being Trump puppets. And that's pathetic and sad. And we really need to stay on it. And it's, you know, one day we'll look back and go, what did those guys, why did they do that? And it's because they want to be on the team. They think that their job in the Senate or House of Representatives is the most important job in the world. They don't want to lose it. And it's not. And there are people that will lose their whole careers to do the right thing. And we got to follow them because it's not that important of a job. They're following a reality star. As you know, in Hollywood, the lowest form of the lowest rung is not movie star. It's reality star. Now, that reality stars get a lot more respect than they used to. But when Trump started, people were like, yeah, he's not a real star. He's a reality star. You know, it's like,
well, he was never in New York. He was never really a real rich guy. I mean, he was a failed businessman viewed as kind of a joke who was always trying to get into legit high society in New York. And honestly, it was the success of The Apprentice, the show that you were on, and Mark Burnett.
I was not on The Apprentice. I was not.
Oh, I thought you were. No?
And Mark Burnett would call, and I'd say, I can't get my head around what the reward is this show. They have for a lot of money. You know, they do a favored nation, $75,000, but then they're like, well, NBC, you write a script for NBC, we'll give you another $300,000, we'll do this. And I really needed the money. And I thought, but what is at the end of this? You're his apprentice? What is the payoff? And I got a total respect for other people that did it. They did it to try to make it good. And, you know, I'm not sure that it was good for them at the end of the day, but they did it. I get that. We do things. But there was, you know, there was no payoff, but they did do a good job of convincing people. So he runs for president.
I didn't realize that you weren't on it. So they romanced you, but you never actually did it.
Oh, yes. They called many times. He called many times. You know, and the last time he called, when I got off the phone, I said, my wife at the time said, why did you say that? I go, say what? You said, I'll see you in New York, Donald. I go, because I told her, I'm not doing this. I'm going to tell him to his face or whatever. And he started smooth talking, and I didn't realize I'd done that. So immediately I called my agent, like, get me out of this. Apparently, I just said to Donald Trump, I'll see you in New York, because you want to please him that much. So I understand why people do that. They go.
I don't know if you've read the Michael Cohen book or even excerpts of it. I suggest that you just crack it a little bit, because a lot of it's going to resonate with you, then land with you in just the way you were just talking about, which is that you want to please him. Cohen talks about the fact, I don't know why I got so into this guy, but he said, I was happy. He said, he apologizes like on every third page. And
well, he should. You know, Michael, I realized early on when I was doing the Trump stuff, I got to get to know Michael Cohen. He hasn't flipped yet. I have no idea. Like, I know him because Trump had him hire a lawyer for a guy from The Apprentice to sue me because I was saying bad things about this guy and his relationship. So I knew him on the negative side. But once I realized that he'd been raided, I said, I got to go to New York and get in his face and make sure he flips. And I flew there in I think, June 22nd of 2018. He still wasn't there. He took pictures with me. He posted them. He knew Trump, wouldn't like that. Giuliani was calling him. You could read the stuff. You can't hang around with Tom Arnold. He hates Tom Arnold. He's the most powerful man in the world. Why are you doing it? And I knew Michael wasn't quite there. And I said to him, I said, I'm going to stay at this hotel until you agree to do this for your family, for the country. I went on an interview saying, Michael's doing this. And, you know, I just wanted to, sometimes people need to push it. I said, you're in a toxic relationship with this guy. I've been in toxic relationships. You need to pull the Band-Aid out. You need to stop. There's no half measures. He's not going to do anything for you. He's not going to help you. He's not going to pay for your lawyers. If you really want to do the right thing for the country, this needs to end, and you need to go big with it. And so, you know, a couple weeks later, he did do that, you know, and I think he's done a great job since. But Michael was like puppy love with Trump. And when Trump didn't bring him to the White House, like he was suicidal. He would have done anything, and he did do anything. He's very responsible for Trump being president. He went to Jerry Falwell Jr. and said, remember that sex thing with the pool boy and your wife and you, the pictures that I fixed? Well, I still got one of the pictures. And I want you to support my boss, Donald Trump. And he did. And even though he's an evangelical, he went, uh-oh, this is bad. I'm going to support Donald Trump full in. I'm going to say Donald Trump is like Jesus. I'm going to do this. So Michael Cohen was responsible for all of that stuff. And he really considered himself part of the Trump family. And that just wasn't the case. So it took him longer to learn than most people. I mean, Trump was so mean to Michael Cohen. He would put him down all the time in front of everybody, like he does Don Jr. And he'd say, I don't want to pay you. I'm cutting even though you've done all this great work, I'm going to cut your salary in half. And I think by the end, with the Stormy Daniels thing, he's like, I need to make a tape of this because otherwise he's not going to pay me back.
Right. That's exactly why he did it, to kind of memorialize what the action statement was. Yeah, that's wild. I mean, it's interesting, Tom. You're one of those guys who you came up through Hollywood as a comedian, as a writer, as a producer, and yet you have cross-pollinated with all of these people who are of immense significance in politics and in our culture right now. It's a weird place you find yourself in.
I've always had, there's been social issues that I got behind. I'm obviously a Democrat, but the Trump thing was different because also there was a Hollywood connection, allegedly, that he's a man from Hollywood that's doing all this stuff. And I just realized how bad this is going to be. And it was shocking how many people very close to Trump would talk to me once they knew I was doing this thing. Because they're enamored with Hollywood, the political people, and we're enamored with what goes on there. So there's a cross. And when Trump started, it became, a blurred line. So they wanted to share stuff. They were aware I was taping people. They were aware I was doing all this stuff. They were taping me. I was taping them. Michael Cohen, you can hear all of our conversations. But it is shocking. And still, this week, a friend of mine, Lauren Windsor, went undercover last week at the Supreme Court. A public event, but, she goes undercover as a MAGA or a far-right Christian, and people talk to her. Judge Alito and his wife just spilled the beans to her. You can see it right now that she put it out yesterday. But it's crazy. It's crazy.
It's huge. That's a huge story. We're going to get into it the next hour. I mean, massive.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that she was your friend.
I knew it was kind of very, because I have a lot of respect for what she does. And she wrote me, we talked last week, said, I'm going to have this huge story. Will you, I'm going to post something the day before. Will you quote that, like help me get that post out there? And I go, yeah. And then she told me what it was with the Alitos. And so by the time it came to post yesterday, I was with my daughter. We were running around and go, I got to do a post. So I take her thing and I post, Lauren is going to the Supreme Court. Like I put it all, I didn't think to not put it out there. And 5 minutes later, she's like, please delete that. You've just told the whole story. I go, I thought that's what I was supposed to do. And then I did. But I'm very proud of her. And there's a lot of brave journalists, women especially, who are doing what they can to get the truth out there. And she's one.
We've created a system, sadly, Tom, and I know we only have another minute here, but we'll wrap up. But the system, especially when it comes to the Supreme Court level, is almost without check. And it's scary what these justices can now get away with, even exposed as they are.
Yeah. And it's funny because the wife is Judge Alito's wife. People are like, well, she's not a public person. She's a public person. She flies the insurrection flag publicly. She loves to talk, and she's kind of hilarious. You and I will remember Martha Mitchell from she reminds me of Martha Mitchell, who's doing all this talking, and her husband's probably like, shut the hell up. But she loves to put it out there, and she certainly put it out there with Lauren Windsor, and so did he, and so did some of the other Supreme Court justices. Like, they have to know that people are looking, and I think that's important to have some transparency, even with the Supreme Court.
Yeah, the court has pushed back, as you know, on any kind of, they've pushed back on transparency. They pushed back on any kind of ethics considerations being handled by Congress. Sheldon Whitehouse is just genius in the way he tracks dark money into the Supreme Court. And he's talked about the fact that, they have to be brought to heel, but it doesn't appear that that's going to happen. It's a real issue. And they're considering those things with, Donald Trump right now, right? They're considering J6 cases.
you got to give credit to ProPublica, the news organization that's funded. They did such great work. They got the Clarence Thomas money stuff going, and then now it's like nobody can ignore it because, it's even worse than the other Supreme Court. He had to come and say, "Oh, I forgot to include $4 million worth of gifts," and hopefully, eventually, there is some consequences for these guys because they're bad. They're bad news.
Agreed. And obviously the court is at low ebb when it comes to public confidence. And what's worse is they've rolled back basic freedoms for women in this country and beyond.
And they want to do more. That's the thing. They, the right wing of the Republican Party, they're not done. They want birth control. It used to be like, oh, they'll never get rid of birth control or IVF, and then they're like, we have an opportunity. We're going to get rid of all of it. We want to take women back. We want to take this country back to the 50s. And gay marriage, forget it. And eventually, and I think Clarence Thomas should be afraid of the black people. Black people couldn't marry white people back in those days. His wife is white. He's like, well, that will never happen. Well, no, the people, maybe you won't, but the people behind you, they're in front of you, they want all of that to happen. And so there's no, oh, that's exaggeration or hyperbole. There isn't with these guys. They're showing their cards, and hopefully people see that on the left, and young people but baby boomers get out and realize this election is very important too.
Yes, and it's sad to see this Congress and this Supreme Court, more powerful than ever, really looking to turn back time that way, and because they're so out of step with America. I mean, just as the Electoral College is out of step with America. Let's continue this. Hey, Tom, where can people you do a couple of different podcasts, one with our old pal Chip Franklin, I know.
Oh, yeah, that's what I just had. We had Lauren on today, which Lauren the Wizard and Max Brooks.
Oh, that's great.
And, people. I don't know where you get that podcast on the on Twitter. I don't know, but it's on the sites and on YouTube or whatever. And then I do a Divorce Party with Monica Casey.
Oh my God, my other half, Courtney, loves that. When I told her, Courtney, Tom Arnold is on.
I like
when she was over the moon. Yeah. Nothing excites her, and she was super excited. She loves that podcast, pal.
Yeah,
so
it's great. It's been great therapy for me. I'll tell you that. It's been great. So tell Courtney, thank you, Mark. I love you.
All right, love you, Tom. Come visit again. Tom Arnold, everybody. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.